Greetings and salutations, and welcome to Threads and Chats. And this is an inaugural episode for Threads and Chats, so I hope that you are coming to enjoy, hang out, listen, catch a vibe, catch some fashion. I don't know, but whatever you catch, I hope that it's a great time. And also, while you're here, please do not hesitate to hit the like and subscribe button to come back for even more, because I will be coming back. So with that being said, what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about a fashion collection that has recently sparked my interest, enough for me to even start this channel. And it is the Polo Ralph Lauren collection, Oak Bluff. Okay, I just want to tell you that I love this collection. And the reason why I love this collection is numerous, but I will save that for the video. So what I'm going to tell you is, looking at this collection, right, I will say that Polo Ralph Lauren, even though people say it's basic, to me, I think that they did their big one, because historical promotion in itself is genius, okay? It's genius. And honestly, I think that some people say, oh, you're capitalizing on Black culture. Honestly, no. To educate people on Black culture is also important. And the way how Ralph Lauren did it is pretty smart. I actually do like it. So, why am I starting off like that? Let me just start off from the beginning. Because why is it so important that we're talking about history in this fashion collection? Well, history and culture and fashion go hand in hand. One thing that we find commonly with fashion is that it takes reference points from culture, and culture is often informed by history. So they're all connected, and so with that being said, this collection is no different. And I'm going to start by talking about something that most people don't want to hear about, don't want to talk about, but I think it's important to discuss. And it is talking about the American legacy of slavery, because this is why this collection is so important, and that is the starting point of our discussion. You know, the history of slavery in the United States basically created a system in which African American people were subjugated to being essentially property and not being allowed to even exist with the dignity of a human being. And so until emancipation, by virtue of the 13th Amendment legally in 1865, Black people didn't have rights. Black people didn't have a voice. Black people didn't have anything, right, as far as this country, the United States, was concerned. And so when we look at 1865, it was the turning point, because now for the first time there was some sort of civil recognition that Black people were free and not able to be parts of an indentured servitude system, except as a punishment for crime. Gotta read the 13th Amendment, folks. It's very important. But beside the point of that, when we then roll into post-emancipation and post-1865, we enter what we call the Reconstruction era. And the Reconstruction era is really a place where we begin to see a development of a sizable Black middle class, not just concentrated in the North with the freedmen, but more so now becoming more diffuse and spread, because you have a bunch of institutions of higher learning opening up. Now, there were a couple of institutions prior to 1865 when the Freedmen's Bureau took over, administering a lot of these new schools. So like Cheyney University, which was founded in 1837, and Lincoln, which was founded in 1854. Those schools come from my home state of Pennsylvania. I'm from Philly, so I know very well about them. But 1865 was when a whole new series of institutions began their start. And the Freedmen's Bureau opened up a ton of new institutions with land grants in a bunch of different states in the South. And a lot of those schools later went on to become some of the famous HBCUs and colleges that we know today, such as Morehouse College, Spelman College, and also other institutions of higher learning like Morris Brown in Atlanta, or Clark University, which used to be known as Atlanta University. Even my alma mater, Howard University, was created during this time in 1867. So the reality of it is that these schools were created, and created also a foundation for people of color, Black people, to go to college, to gain degrees and educate ourselves beyond what we were able to beforehand. But in doing that, it creates another class of people. So now you have an entire new class of doctors, an entire new class of lawyers, of educators, of business people graduating from these institutions. And as they do so, right, they go to larger cities. And some of these larger cities are large centers like Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. And even Atlanta and some smaller southern cities were also gaining that influx as well. But when the Great Migration happened in the early beginning of the 1900s all the way through, especially that 1920s period, you had a large number of Black people moving from the South to the North to larger cities such as Washington, D.C., Boston, Philadelphia, New York, and the list goes on and on and on. And when that happened, that size of, or that class of well-to-do Black people grew as well in these centers. And in the Northeast, it's completely different because we wanted a vacation center. You know, people always want to get away from the city and get away from the hustle and the bustle to take a moment to step away. And so in the Northeast, we go to the shore, right? And going to the shore, especially in Massachusetts, Martha's Vineyard is known as the place to be. As far as you want a shore, resort, vacation, you go to Martha's Vineyard because it's the best place to be. It's clean, it's beautiful, it's pristine. And Black people understood this very early. So the earliest records of Black people owning property and buying property was as late as, or as early as the late 1890s, 1880s. They were buying property then. And that number of people, that number of Black people that were buying properties steadily increased and steadily grew. Over time, there was a sizable Black population living in that area, owning property in that area, and even hosting annual gatherings in that area. Even now in 2025, there's still an annual gathering in Martha's Vineyard for this group of Black people that go. And it's a beautiful time. It's amazing. And it's something to be said. It's an experience, right? Now, where do all these Black people end up though in Martha's Vineyard? And this is where it all connects because it's all known as the Oak Bluff community. Oak Bluff is a community in Martha's Vineyard that has a very large Black population who own property or are there for summer resorting purposes. And it's very well known. It's been known for over a century that is the place to go if you are a Black person that wishes to go to Martha's Vineyard. And I'm going to be honest with you. You know, Polo Ralph Lauren deciding to take this approach and highlighting this aspect of American history is genius. And while some people will say they're benefiting and they're profiting, one thing that I noticed in looking at the ad campaigns is that they actually did a good job of showcasing Black people in the actual community and also demonstrating it from an intergenerational perspective, right? It's not just young models that you see. You see young, old. You see, you know, people that could potentially be related in the ad campaigns. You see HBCU mentions of Morehouse and Spelman on the actual clothing. You see Martha's Vineyard and Oak Bluff both prominently featured together, right? And so people don't think about it, but a lot of times people often try to talk about the Black experience from a monolithic perspective. This is a corner of the Black experience that some people don't get the chance to see, but it exists. And I think that it's also an important part of American culture to talk about not just necessarily standard upper crust American culture, but Black upper crust American culture, right? A lot of people, especially from people who are from urban areas or inner city areas like myself, I'm from Philly. I grew up in Philly and I was born and raised there. One thing I will say is that when we're growing up and we look at, people that look like us, but they have these luxury, opulent vacations, we're like, it's not like we're hating necessarily, but we can't relate and can't connect because a lot of our experiences, or some of us who are from a certain experience, haven't lived on the other side of the street to really know what it is. And so now with Ralph Lauren highlighting this experience, it's important because it demonstrates it's something unique, right? It demonstrates that even with that level of money and access and opulence, so to speak, Black people still have a separate experience. And historically speaking, right, some of it was created because of the fact of, okay, legally, there was a separationism that existed prior to Brown versus Board of Education, right? And that was in 1954 that case was decided. But even not talking about the legalities of separation, there's a safety in separation that a lot of people talk about. And one of the ads, specifically on Polo Ralph Lauren, they talked about how they were safe being in the Oak Bluff community. It was one of the safe places to go. And so, again, it harkens back and gives a nod to that aspect of American history and Black history in the United States, that we weren't always able to go everywhere, whenever we wanted to, how we wanted to, even if it came down to having the money and the ability to go. We still were very limited in places that we could go, historically speaking. But even in that limitation, there was a growth of this class of excellence and opulence, right? And now we look back at some of our, our historical figures, and some of them have vacationed in Martha's Vineyard in the same exact place. And we're like, wow, okay, there's a tie there, and it is. So definitely will say they did a very good job in terms of providing that intellectual connection, that Black history connection. And I really couldn't have asked for anything better. And while some people may disagree, I do think that to provide a nod to the culture and to provide that connection to the culture, it's better than just completely jacking it and running with it and not saying anything about it, right? Or taking it for profit and then, not allowing people of the group to be a part of the ad campaign in question. Just saying. Now, as far as the collection and what it looks like itself, the collection and what it looks like itself, I will tell you, is very much resort wear, but not resort wear. Follow me real quick. So basically what this means is, you have the elements of resort wear, very light colors. You have very loose and relaxed tailoring, right? And it's a very classical loose and relaxed tailoring on a lot of the beachwear sort of items. A lot of the slacks are pretty loose and fit. They don't look to be overly modern fitted. They don't seem to be, tight in the seat or tight in the derriere or tight in the waist. They seem to be very relaxed. Even with the shirting is very open. It's very flowy. There's not a lot of dark coloration in the clothing. You see a lot of white. You see a lot of tans, a lot of beiges. You see a lot of even off-white colors, right? And so that is indicative of a very resort type of aesthetic. Now, the one thing I will also point out, though, is that it's not just resort, right? You have this combination of like this 1920s, 30s, like male boy effect going on with the tweed, because there's a lot of tweed that I've seen, and the tweed is pretty nice. But then also on the flip side of it, you have this 1950s and 60s influence, where some of the ladies look like they could have stepped out with Jackie O if they wanted to. And they have the varsity sweater, the head ties, the very mod glasses. And it's a really nice look, very cohesive, and very historically true to form and reference and accuracy to some extent, but with a little bit of a twist. Now, it's also another minor detail that I picked up on, right? But when I was looking through the ad campaign, I picked up on cowrie shell earrings. Now, considering that Polo Ralph Lauren is a very traditional American brand, this was a very intentional nod to Black culture by having this model wear cowrie shell earrings. For those that may not understand, cowrie shells in the diasporic culture is very important, right? It's very important also to a lot of cultures in mainland Africa, but even the diasporic culture, different diasporic cultures do also hold a significance for cowrie shells. And that's why they're sometimes still used in jewelry. Some people even wear them in their locks. And again, it's perfect in terms of being an accessory because of the fact that it demonstrates a level of cultural connection that is very intentional, because again, we're trying to tell the story about a specific class of Black people in American history that through the generations have existed in this specific place that people probably would not have expected them to exist. And so again, very intentional and very good nod to the diasporic culture, so to speak. Now, the reason why it is not, though, just a resort collection, it is not just a resort collection, is because of the fact that you do have suiting, you do have tailoring, and it is this, looks like it's kind of heavy-ish tweed suiting and tailoring. That's very well done. You have very chunky sweaters. You have varsity jackets. So it's a resort collection that has clothing that could fit a non-resort season, i.e. fall or winter. I think that it's genius because, again, even with the way how it's designed and it's set up, you could wear these pieces individually. You can mix and match them with other items. You could put an entire Polo Ralph Lauren, wardrobe together, and it would still be very cohesive. But even if you didn't have every single piece in this collection, you can make some of the staple pieces work very well for you. I definitely think that as far as this collection goes, this was very complete and very well thought out. And again, as far as a classic from Polo Ralph Lauren, it's American classic Polo Ralph Lauren. So you can't really go wrong with the way they've structured this. Now, one thing I will say is, and this is the only thing that I will deduct a point for. The only thing I will deduct a point for is I feel like when looking at some of the ad campaigns, and this is just a little bit of a critique, is that the lighting could be a bit of an issue. And overall, most of the shots are very well done and very well composed. They look really nice. Ads are on 10. I love it. However, in my mind, a couple of the photographs, when I was looking through the gallery of the photos from the collection, they did come across a little dark, that I couldn't receive the actual clothing or receive like the vibe of what the clothing was supposed to receive. But it wasn't universal across every single photo in the spread or in the collection. And quite frankly, I got the gist of the collection because it was very well done. I have no arguments or qualms about it. But I would just say the shooting, it was a couple of the photos were like, okay, I have to figure out where my eyes are landing here. And thankfully, it landed pretty fast, but I had to figure it out for a moment. So if I were to give this collection a rating, right? Because also on this program, we are going to rate things. So in my mind, I'm going to rate this new collection, this Oak Bluff collection from Polo Ralph Lauren, a very, very solid 9 out of 10, 9.0 out of 10. Because to me, right, it's very well thought out, very cohesive. The branding is very good, but also the attention to the story and providing the public with the information, but not really making it a history lesson. Like, not making it an over dive into the history book. Very, very wise, very, very good, very, very smart. And I think that also shout out to Morehouse and Spelman for also, collaborating and working with Polo Ralph Lauren. I think this is probably the second or the third time they've done it. And again, coming out with something that's very good, that's able to tell our history in a way that's meaningful. Again, I think it's great, and I rather that we join in actually helping to tell our stories and having someone else tell our stories for us. So with that being said, that is all for this particular episode. I really don't have much else to say. Again, you got a 9 out of 10 from me. Perfect. Well, not perfect, because that'd be 10 out of 10, but you get what I'm saying. So be that as it may, y'all have a great one, and I will catch y'all the next time. Please like and subscribe, and I will see y'all later. Bye.